Okay, yeah. So, Julio, you're saying that people jump to the conclusion that just because you're in the military, people think you want to kill. Yeah, I can see that. Certainly a portion of people. I'm not sure what you're saying there, Kiara. Are you saying you think it's okay or it's not okay? Which of those is your opinion? I think it's because they grow up with some respect, depending on the parents, and they learn right from wrong. What about you, Amy? Oh, okay. Yeah, definitely on the president. Um, Whether you like him or whether you don't like him, somebody's bound to disagree with you. So, give me your opinion. What side are you on, Amy, and why? The why is what I'm trying to get at here, not just what's the unpopular opinion. I want you guys to explain why these are your opinions. Ah, excellent, Julia. Okay, so that tells me a why as far as people who argue against you. That is a logical fallacy, Julio. You see it all the time. That is called a hasty generalization. When people jump to a conclusion without knowing very much about it. Okay, Amy, if pressed for evidence on that, what would you cite to support that opinion? And Kiara, same with you. What is it that backs up your position there? What? Tell me the why do you think it's okay? Right, Julio. Okay, so if pressed, Amy, if you had to sit here for an hour and think up evidence, you would go back and try to cite his actions as evidence for your belief. Or maybe his words. Okay, and Kiara is saying, given her opinion, it is empirical evidence. Seeing children who were disciplined and who grow up with manners supports the idea that spanking is okay. Gotcha. Okay. All right, we're going to come back to those things here in just a short bit. There was a purpose for those questions, but we'll circle back around to it. So thanks for showing up tonight, even though it's Thursday and our regular chat night is Tuesday. I appreciate you being here. Did anybody forget and come on Tuesday? I did put a big note in the classroom to remind everybody who did show up on Tuesday that... So this week, tell me about your Unit 1 discussion boards. Anything you noticed, any questions you have about that? It was a 3-part discussion board where you need to introduce yourself and then talk about your experience with writing and research. Anything to be said about that? Any questions you had? If so, go ahead and write them there in the chat window. I'll go ahead and keep on talking here, but I'll address anything that you posted. I was right about that, wasn't I? Last week in chat, I told you to pay attention to your classmates' posts, and you would see plenty of classmates who only posted their bio and did not follow the instructions. That is an issue in this course on most assignments, and I would say more students lose points in this class purely because they're not reading the assignments correctly and doing what the task instructs them to do. So week 2 looks very much like week 1. You've got a discussion board and an IntelliPath. This week, though, on the discussion board, you do need to submit peer responses. Your main post for the discussion board needs to be submitted tomorrow night. you can wait until Tuesday to get the peer responses in. The sources. Are you thinking of the Unit 2 discussion board, Julio? The article that you read? Because we didn't use any sources in Unit 1. We just talked about our experience with writing and research. Maybe I'm just missing your intention there. IntelliPath, I did grade this Unit 1 IntelliPath. I graded it yesterday. You guys did great on that. There are a few people who've had life events come up, which always happens for adults doing online education. The cool thing about IntelliPath is that you can keep working away at it all the way up until midnight on our the last night of class, which is a Thursday. I don't know what the date is. Oh, I got you, Julio. Okay, thanks for clearing that up. You don't get any late point deductions on IntelliPath. However, let me give you a warning. Some people hear that and they think, well, awesome, I'll just do everything else first and then I'll do IntelliPath at the end. You guys know from working through these IntelliPath units, it can take a couple hours to get through that. So even though you don't get a late point deduction and you can continue to work to improve your grade by hacking away at that, yes, exactly. They pile up on you, and it's easy to get to where you can't get caught up. So don't let it go on too long, but if you miss the deadline, keep working at it anyway. Just discussed that, 135 points on those. Okay, quiz question. How many decisions do we average every day? 2,000, 20,000, 35,000, or 50,000? What do you think? What's your best guess? 50,000, Julio says. Oh, you snuck in there, Damon. I didn't see you come in. Thanks for joining us. 20,000, 35,000. Well, do I hear two? Do I hear two? The correct answer is 35,000, at least according to this particular article. Yeah, I tried to be conscious of the decisions one morning as I woke up. When I was thinking about this, I thought, okay, first decision, am I going to roll over and look at the clock? Second decision, do I hit the snooze button or do I turn it off? Then, of course, do I get out of bed? Then what am I going to do first? Brush my teeth, whatever. I mean, the decisions start out right away. Every day, we have thousands of decisions. And we usually don't spend a lot of time learning how to think critically. Go back to those questions that we were talking about when class first started. People come to conclusions, but they don't apply a lot of critical thinking to the topics at hand. Have you ever gotten in an argument with somebody? I used to have this boss a long time ago when I first got into the publishing world. I had a boss. He was the executive editor. And all of the other editors who would work on content would then, after they had edited the content, they would give it to the... Yeah, absolutely, Julio. After we would finish editing our content, we'd give it to the executive editor who would look through it and he'd make changes or, anything that he would catch. Well, frequently, a lot of the changes that he made were issues of opinion, not issues of facts. And that's kind of demeaning to an editor to say, you have to go with my opinion. We're not going to use your opinion. It's fine to correct something that's wrong. Well, then, of course, you'd get into an argument with the executive editor, and you would try to defend your content the way you had written it, and the editor would explain why he was right. And nobody could ever win an argument with this guy. You would know when you were arguing with him, frequently in your head, you would think, I know he's wrong, but I don't know why he's wrong. I can't put my finger on it. Have you ever been in a situation like that, or known a person like that who will argue about everything and they always win their arguments? Even though you might know they're wrong, you can't access the reason that they're in that. It's so frustrating. Isn't that frustrating? It all comes back to critical thinking. Typically in those situations, the person is making some sort of critical thinking error, and we're not able to put our finger on what is that thinking error that they're making. It takes a lot of practice to begin to spot them, and there's a lot of different kinds that they can make. So what I've done with my kids is I pick a couple. There's a couple that are really common that we do, and I'll come back to those in a little bit. Critical thinking is a key point of writing professionally. You are presenting yourself as a reasonable person who makes decisions based on facts, or makes decisions based on the opinions of credible people who are experts in the field that you're having something to do with. Now, if you look it up in the dictionary, you'll see something that looks like this. Critical thinking is reasonable, reflective thinking that's focused on deciding what to believe or do. Doesn't that sound like a dictionary definition? You got to go back and read it and go, what does that say? Basically, critical thinking is thinking about thinking. Critical thinking is to use your brain to say, why is that person coming to the conclusion they're coming to? Do I believe it? Is it based on credible evidence? Do I think there's holes in their argument? That's critical thinking, when you are thinking about the thoughts of the others. That's largely what graduate school is all about. When we go through our undergraduate degrees, we learn the facts, we learn the processes, we learn all the basic stuff. And then when you get into graduate school, that's all focused around, okay, look at all these theories that play into this discipline. Which theory do you like the best and why? And why do the other theories have holes in them? You spend a lot of time in graduate school trying to get more of a global perspective and figuring out how to analyze information, how to solve problems, create solutions, how to think creatively and present your ideas to others. And we all do that. I mean, we do that whether we're arguing with our kids about whether they should go out in the rain without a jacket, or why they can't walk barefoot on the 105-degree driveway. You know, whatever it is. You know, kids want to do ridiculous things, and we find ourselves in these silly arguments with them, trying to convince them of something that really there's not that hard to figure out why they should or shouldn't do. Complex problem solving and critical thinking are two of the most sought after skills in the real world. So what we're talking about here is not just theoretical. This is a real world skill. A guy that I worked with years ago, he said, I like to hire people who could think. And this is what he means. People who get into a position and can reason their way to solid decisions. Maybe it's the wrong decision, but at least they followed an intelligent line of thought to come to the decision that they come to. That's not that common. You know, there are certain people that you work with, they want to be told every step, okay, what do I do now? What do I do now? What's my to-do list today? What do you need done? I don't want to have to tell somebody every step of the way. I want to tell them, here's the goal we're trying to get to. Now you get there using your brains to figure out what do you need to do to get to the end point. It is a skill that's highly prized, and employees who can do that are ones who tend to stay along for quite some time. I'm going to show you a 4-minute video here, 4 or 5 minutes, and then, oh, Ciara, thanks for joining us. Glad you could be here. All right, I'm going to switch over here to this video. This is a video I pulled off of YouTube. The URL is down there at the bottom of the screen if you want to see it again. 4.5 minutes. This is going to give you a little deeper introduction to what we're talking about here.
Every day, a sea of of decisions stretches before us.
Every day, a sea of decisions stretches before us. Some are small and unimportant, but others have a larger impact on our lives. For example, which politician should I vote for? Should I try the latest diet craze? Or will email make me a millionaire? We're bombarded with so many decisions that it's impossible to make a perfect choice every time. But there are many ways to improve.
Hang on a second. Amy says she can't see the video. Is anybody else having trouble seeing this? Damon, Julio, Kiara, Sierra, can you guys see it okay? Okay. Okay. Amy, I wonder if it might be your web browser. Without logging out of your current browser, maybe pull up another one and try to log into this class a second time and see if you can see it on the other one.
And one
I'm going to go ahead and
particularly
continue
effective
this.
technique
Our chances,
is critical
and one
thinking.
particularly effective technique is critical thinking. This is a way of approaching a question that allows us to carefully deconstruct a situation, reveal its hidden issues, such as bias and manipulation, and make the best decision. If the critical part sounds negative, that's because, in a way, it is. Rather than choosing an answer because it feels right, a person who uses critical thinking subjects all available options to scrutiny and skepticism. Using the tools at their disposal, they'll eliminate everything but the most useful and reliable information. There are many different ways of approaching critical thinking, but here's one 5-step process that may help you solve any number of problems. 1. Formulate your question. In other words, know what you're looking for. This isn't always as straightforward as it sounds. For example, if you're deciding whether to try out the newest diet craze, your reasons for doing so may be obscured by other factors, like claims that you'll see results in just 2 weeks. But if you approach the situation with a clear view of what you're actually trying to accomplish by dieting, whether that's weight loss, better nutrition, or having more energy, that'll equip you to sift through this information critically, find what you're looking for, and decide whether the new fad really suits your needs. 2. Gather your information. There's lots of it out there, so having a clear idea of your question will help you determine what's relevant. If you're trying to decide on a diet to improve your nutrition, you may ask an expert for their advice, or seek other people's testimonies. Information gathering helps you weigh different options, moving you closer to a decision that meets your goal. 3. Apply the information. Something you do by asking critical questions. Facing a decision, ask yourself, what concepts are at work? What assumptions exist? Is my interpretation of the information logically sound? For example, in an email that promises you millions, you should consider, what is shaping my approach to this situation? Do I assume the sender is telling the truth? Based on the evidence, is it logical to assume I'll win any money? 4. Consider the implications. Imagine it's election time, and you've selected a political candidate based on their promise to make it cheaper for drivers to fill up on gas. At first glance, that seems great. But what about the long-term environmental effects? If gasoline use is less restricted by cost, this could also cause a huge surge in air pollution, an unintended consequence that's important to think about. 5. Explore other points of view. Ask yourself why so many people are drawn to the policies of the opposing political candidate. Even if you disagree with everything that candidate says, exploring the full spectrum of viewpoints might explain why some policies that don't seem valid to you appeal to others. This will allow you to explore alternatives, evaluate your own choices, and ultimately help you make more informed decisions. This 5-step process is just one tool, and it certainly won't eradicate difficult decisions from our lives, but it can help us increase the number of positive choices we make. Critical thinking can give us the tools to sift through a sea of information and find what we're looking for. And if enough of us use it, it has the power to make the world a more reasonable place.
Okay. So this week, you're supposed to choose an article, and then you're supposed to answer some questions about that article. Now, it will be tempting for you just to talk about the article. Here's what the person had to say. But that's not the point of this exercise. The point of the Unit 2 discussion board is for you to read an article and then make some sort of quality judgment on the article. And of course, to be able to make a judgment, you have to understand what's going on. What is the author trying to do in this article? Who are they writing to? Are they writing to everyday people? Are they writing to professionals? Based on that, are they using the right language? Are they presenting enough facts? Is this an emotional argument or is it a factual-based argument? And are there problems in the facts? Perhaps they're not giving you enough facts. Are the people that they are using as sources in the article credible? Do you believe those people? Do they have a good background, some knowledge or expertise in that particular field? The Unit 2 discussion board and the Unit 4 essay, and I'm going to throw in the Unit 3 discussion board because that's your research component for the essay. These are all linked, these assignments. And the assignments are to get you moving in this critical thinking place and then to write your opinion using those articles either to support your opinion or refuting those articles as bad evidence. So, let me give you some examples. Amy might enjoy this. Here are 3 very common critical thinking errors. And regardless of whether you like our president or whether you don't like him, Amy has already admitted she's not a fan. His tweets are filled with logical errors, critical thinking errors. And I want to point out 3 of them as examples because I think once you see them, you'll start going, oh yeah, I see that all the time. So let's take this particular tweet. Trump says, I don't know Putin, I have no deals in Russia, and the haters are going crazy. Yet Obama can make a deal with Iran. #1 in terror, no problem. Okay, but he never mentions why we should not believe that he has ties to Russia. He actually doesn't even address it. He tells us he doesn't, but he doesn't give us any reasons to back that up. And this is called a red herring. This is when the person tries to distract you from the actual point under conversation by attacking someone else. And it makes you race over there and then try to defend the other person. So let's say my daughter comes home. I have gotten a letter from the teacher that she didn't complete her homework. And so I tell my daughter, hey, I heard that you didn't complete your homework. And she said, well, that teacher hates me anyway. That teacher's always unfair. She's just looking for a Okay, but that's not the question. The question is, why didn't you do your homework? That's a red herring argument. And this probably happens more often than it doesn't happen, especially in the world of politics. How often does anyone in the world of politics actually answer the question that they're being asked? Very rarely. They don't just give you a straight-on answer. They divert your attention by talking about something else. That's called a red herring critical thinking error. Deflect. That is exactly the word. Ad hominem. Okay. This is when someone derides or makes fun of a person and uses that as a reason not to listen to him. And Trump is a master at this. He does this all the time. He doesn't tell why the person is wrong. He just makes fun of them. Think of him on the campaign trail. What are all the nicknames he came up with for his, Lion Ted Cruz and Crooked Hillary? And he has a nickname for everybody. Those are all ad hominem attacks. He doesn't say, you've got a terrible plan for keeping our our country's employment under control because, and he lay out some facts to tell us why that person is wrong. No, he just tells you they're stupid. Well, that's not helpful. That's not evidence. Making fun of somebody is not addressing the argument. So in this one, wacky New York Times Dowd, who hardly knows me, makes up things I never said for her boring interviews and column. A neurotic dope. Okay, well, why don't you talk about some of the facts in the article and tell us what are the real facts if she's wrong? If you went on the internet and searched ad hominem Trump, there are lots of lists out there. I think the New York Times keeps a running list because this happens probably every third tweet that he has. They're ad hominem critical thinking errors. Another one, straw man. Okay, so a straw man argument is when a person argues against something that's a myth. It never happened. In this case, Trump is referring to this accusation that the New York Times sent a letter to their subscribers apologizing for spreading misinformation. Well, they never did that. So the argument's a moot point. It didn't happen. Trump takes issue with it and pretends like it did happen. The coverage about me in the New York Times and the Washington Post has been so false and angry that the Times actually apologized to its dwindling subscribers and readers. So he's arguing about this. No, they didn't. They actually never sent a letter. They got me wrong right from the beginning and will still not change. So he's arguing about something and using as evidence a mythological event. Now, these get harder to see. There's a lot of things that make them hard to see. Emotion makes them hard to see. If you don't know the topic that's being discussed, it's easy for somebody to lie to you, and you can't tell they're lying because you're not an expert in that particular field. The ad hominem agreements are easy. I mean, anyone can identify when somebody's making fun of another person. But things like Julio brought up at the beginning, people who accuse military, members of the military as, whatever, baby killers or, that's more of a Vietnam thing, but, warmongers, I guess, might be a little more. Well, that's not an argument. That's an ad hominem agreement. Ad hominem argument. Bring us some facts. This is what we're looking for as you go forward, beginning with the Unit 2 discussion board. Read the articles and look at the reasoning that the authors of the articles are using. What evidence do they present to support their arguments? Do they present any? Most of them do. So look at the evidence and decide whether you agree with it or not. If you disagree, what is your basis for disagreeing? Are you disagreeing because that person wasn't credible? Think about it all the times we see Hollywood types in a Senate, some sort of a Senate hearing. A couple of years ago, I remember seeing Seth Rogen in front of Congress talking about care of the elderly or something like that. Well, great. I'm in favor of what he was arguing. But who is Seth Rogen? He has no expertise in caring for elderly people. Why would that be convincing to us? Perhaps he's a good speaker. Perhaps he's passionate and convincing, but he's not an expert. So as you're doing the Unit 2 discussion board, and as you're looking in Unit 3 for research into the topic of our essay, be running these things through your head. Do I believe this? Why do I believe this? Is this a good argument? Are there other parts of the argument that are being ignored? That's a big problem. If somebody's trying to argue a point and they don't acknowledge the other side, they pretend like it doesn't even exist, like it's just a one-sided, there is no argument. Well, we all know there's an argument. Acknowledge the other side and tell us why their position is weak. Then when we get to the Unit 4 essay, you will be writing something choosing a position basically about the pros and cons of using social media in business. That's your topic. I want to know what you think. I don't want a summary of the articles you use as research. I just want you to use those researched articles to support your opinion. I want to know what Amy thinks about whether or not social media in business is a good or bad thing, and why. And I totally expect that Amy is going to cite experts in the field who have studied this and who say, you know, here's a good reason for it, there's a good reason for it, and here's a good reason for it. And Amy can say, I'm convinced because these experts say these things and I believe them. That's what I'm looking for. I don't just want a summary of the articles. I want to know what you have to say about it. Okay, we are at time. Any questions before I let you go tonight? Don't forget, your main post is due tomorrow night. If you haven't posted it yet, try to jump in there. Thank you guys for being here tonight. Good group of people. I love how you're all chatting in the chat window. Makes class so much more interesting when people actually are engaging. All right, well, have a wonderful evening and a great weekend. I will be looking for your posts on the discussion board, and then we'll catch up Tuesday night. Julio, I just saw your question here. Can we use cited notes from experts in the fields? Absolutely. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah, definitely.